Hola, so let's go back to the notes for just a little while. We've made it now to page 22. So that was a pretty clear description of actually achieving shamatha, what will happen that day. So you'll know it. And then once you're resting in shamatha, you turn the heat down to a simmer. And you're simply dwelling in shamatha without yet putting it to use. Then there's a lot of material here from Tsongkhapa, and then citing Asanga, citing Stiramati. Again, Tsongkhapa's always going for solid gold sources, absolutely authoritative sources from the Buddha himself and then onwards. Here's a very interesting one from Wonjut Dorje, the 9th Karmapa, again in the Kagyupa tradition. This is a classic text. The Ngedung Gyatso is called, the Ocean of Definitive Meaning, one of the great classics in the whole Kagyupa tradition. You can see written in the 16th century. Let's just read that one. Thus, due to the experiences of bliss, luminosity, and non-conceptuality, craving for the allures of the desire realm subsides. They say it's like offering grass to a tiger. You know, are you hungry, tiger? How about some hay? And it just has no appeal. You know, that is, you're resting in an ambrosial pool of simultaneous bliss, luminosity, and non-conceptuality. And then somebody says, "Wouldn't you like to come out of samadhi and have a gourmet meal?" Why would I want to do that? There's no pleasure I can possibly derive from a gourmet meal or any other sensual pleasure that can compare with what I find in samadhi. So please don't bother me. I'm good. You know. So it just subsides. There's no, and this is interesting. I don't think it's universally true, but he would not have said this had it not been true on occasion. There's no need to eat food. This is quite clearly documented in both Hindu and Buddhist traditions, that if you go deep enough in samadhi, you can simply live on the food of samadhi. Your whole body-mind is so well-tuned that you're just not needing to have any caloric intake. That'd be interesting to test. So that's what he says. And the movements of the respiration are not sensed. That is, it's so subtle. Your breathing is not completely stopped. That happens only at the 4th jhana, which is very advanced. But it's so subtle that it's hard to even detect it, you know? Great joy arises with the thought, now this is what the Buddha had in mind. And his emphasis, he says just like that in Tibetan. It's a very close translation. And there comes great certainty in thinking of your guru as a Buddha. This is in the context of Vajrayana. So I won't elaborate here. I believe Yang Shen has already done so to some extent. And so once you've achieved shamatha, they're saying this is really opens up reservoirs of abilities you probably never thought you had unless you read about it. So while tainted extrasensory perception, tainted means it may still be imbued with dualistic grasping, a sense of a real difference, a separation between subject and object. There may be some faint stain of mental afflictions, but extrasensory perception means exactly being able to actually know other people's thoughts, clairvoyance, being able remote viewing, actually able to know things that are distant in space. Precognition could arise, knowing things that will happen in the future. These are considered to be, I don't know, new age, but these are extremely old age. There's nothing, how do you say, they're simply paranormal abilities. I like to think of this analogy. Lasers were developed only in about the 1950s. I had a whole course where we studied the history of laser, among other things. But prior to lasers, if you said in 1910 that, you know, if you just get a light, like a flashlight, and get it into a really fine beam, just a nice, really tight beam, and you put a lot of energy into it, and make it of one frequency, you know what you could do with it? You could do laser surgery on the eyes, and you could blow up something up in space, like Star Wars. You could blow up something. You could blow up a satellite in space, and you could use it as a weapon. You can use it to cut diamonds. You can use it to create holographic images, three-dimensional images. You can do that with light if you really refine it, empower it, homogenize it, and so forth. He said that in 1910. People think, yeah, he smoked too much dope. What is this? It's crazy. Light? Come on, light? Light? It's light. That's light. You can't. It's just light. That's crazy talk. It's not crazy talk. It's paranormal light. That's not normal. That's not normal light. It's paranormal light, and you need to get the right technology to do that. And I studied the whole history. It was quite fascinating. I won't elaborate. But the light of awareness, bear in mind the very nature of consciousness is luminosity. Powerful metaphor of light. And if you develop and you hone through all those 9 stages, that your light is single-pointedly directed and powerfully energized by enhancing vividness, temporal and qualitative vividness, you're turning your flashlight or your torch into a laser. And the potential of light for engaging in paranormal activities is far greater than the paranormal activities you can do with light when you turn it into a laser. Laser technology is absolutely fantastic technology. But we've hardly even begun in the modern world to explore the potentials of consciousness when you refine it. And Shamatha is the first step. Shamatha is to exploring the nature of the mind and the role of the mind in nature. It is to that what a telescope is to astronomy. No telescope, you pretty much got astrology, which may or not be true. That's everybody's opinion. But you don't have astronomy. Without a telescope, you don't have astronomy. You won't know that there are moons around Jupiter. You won't know that you're not going to know much of anything. And so, if you don't have shamatha, you're really not going to know much about the mind. You'll just know mind as in folk psychology. Relative, ordinary minds, dysfunctional minds. You'll learn all about that. Heal people whose minds are ill. That's wonderful. But the role of the mind in nature, the power of the mind, potential of the mind, you'll be clueless. Shamatha is the game opener. So while tainted extrasensory perception, paranormal abilities, and so on may also come up. Paranormal abilities, wide variety. They may just kind of just emerge naturally. It happens. Or you may use your shamatha and explicitly develop them. And I read about this extensively when I was in retreat in Sri Lanka in 1980, 81. And it was just so prosaic. You can read about it in The Path of Purification, or this other book I cited, Buddhist Meditation in Theory and Practice by Vajrayana, free download. He's writing in contemporary English. It's really, really lucid. And he goes through how exactly do you develop the ability to walk on water, to fly in the sky, to walk through walls, to transform and so forth, one into many, many into one. How do you do that? And it's just like reading a chemistry textbook. There's no supplication for boons. There's nothing divine, nothing that's supernatural. It's completely natural. It's just ordinary. Like going from a flashlight to a laser. It's ordinary in the sense of not being supernatural. But it's extraordinary because you've taken a natural force of nature, refined it, focused it, empowered it, and the powers of the mind are utterly staggering. And in this regard, we in the modern world, 2019, we're living literally in a dark age. Because we're asking the dumbest questions you can ask. How does the brain generate consciousness? And I just received an email from a friend of this physicist. I'd asked him, is there any branch of physics that allows for the possibility of immaterial phenomena arising as emergent properties from physical? No. And yet there it is, that's just ordinary physics. And yet that little fact is being completely universally ignored by people saying mind is a function of the brain, consciousness emerges from the brain. It's all hocus pocus. It's hocus pocus. It's pseudoscience. And yet that's where all the money is going right now. We're just flushing that money down the toilet. We should get real. If you want to study the mind, look at the mind, refine the mind, and then get going. So let's get one center going, the Center for Contemplative Research, 18 cabins. Let's get the show on the road. And if we succeed, then let's get one down here, down under. Let's get one in Brazil, also down under, over yonder. Let's get them going, and let the Christians do it. What are you Christians sitting around for? I'm going to scold the Christians. Why aren't you doing this? You have a tremendously rich tradition. You don't need to call on us. You've got it. Why don't you be treasure revealers of your own tradition? You have everything it needs. Let's have a contemplative research center for the Christians and for the Sufis and the Hindus and the Taoists and humanists. People don't really care for religion. Okay, cool. I don't care whether you care for religion or not. Why don't you just develop shamatha and see for yourself? Ehi pasi, come and see. So, if you get these paranormal abilities and extrasensory perception, don't make a big deal out of it. They can be a huge distraction. You can become a superstar. You can go to MIT, what you say, something your stuff. Strutting your stuff. You can go to MIT, strut your stuff. You want to see me levitate? Ooh, wow, you become a superstar. And now you get to carry the burden of being a superstar, and everybody wants your autograph. And really, if you want to levitate, get in an elevator. It's much cheaper. If you want to fly, I do it all the time. Airline tickets are easy. If you want to walk on water, go to the Arctic. And if you want to be clairvoyant, I'm clairvoyant. I speak to people from a great distance. I can see them from afar. I can send them my messages mind to mind. This is my clairvoyant technology. Not a big deal. But it is a big deal in the sense of showing the capacity not of just fantastic technology, but the fantastic powers of your own mind. Now that's worth knowing, but then don't get hung up. There are more important things to do, like know the nature of reality, develop bodhicitta. That's far more important. And if this experience of single-pointedness is cultivated for a year, afterwards realization will be gained and it will be stabilized. He's saying here what I heard way back in 1972 or so from Geshe Ngawang Taiki. If you develop shamatha, you achieve shamatha, then vipassana, cutting the root of samsara, not difficult. Not difficult. So this is the game changer. You don't have it, none of the higher practices will be fully efficacious. And you won't reach the path. You'll reach nothing that is irreversible. So shamatha by itself, not that big a deal. Shamatha applied to everything is a huge deal. The best indicator of having firm shamatha is that one cannot sense movements of the breath or body, and cannot even sense whether they are there. That is, you become completely oblivious of your body, completely withdrawn. You know about it, totally in the mental domain. But if you haven't fully achieved shamatha, then, but pretty far there, like maybe stage 7 or 8, but then immediately indicators that they're sensed only if they're examined. You're aware of your body only if you turn your attention to it, but if you don't, it fades out. And if you're way down to maybe 5 or 6, the lowest indicator is that one is not bothered by the movements of the breath or the weight of the body, because you're mostly dwelling in that space of the mind. And so we're moving on. A nice quote here from the Vajra Essence. Trade effects, this is enormous. That is, if all the benefits you get from shamatha are confined only to the time you're in samadhi, but then it's business as usual and when out, then that's a very limited benefit, and happily that's not the case. And so here's from Tsongkhapa. I translated his whole presentation of shamatha in his medium lamrim, his medium exposition of the stages of the path. That was kind of the core of one of my 2 doctoral dissertations at Stanford. So he writes here, moreover, in post-meditative experience, when you get off the cushion, you're out and about, the occurrence of the ideation of afflictions, so afflictive thoughts, malevolent, greedy, selfish, and so forth, such as hatred, is utterly different than before. Whatever mental afflictions come up, they may still come up. You haven't eradicated any of them. But when they do, they are feeble and incapable of being very prolonged. So you want to almost, but not quite, start feeling sorry for your mental afflictions, because they hardly ever come up. Your mind is so robust, your psychological immune system is just so strong that it's hard for them to get to you at all. They're hard to get into, and when they do get, they're kind of like trembling. Please don't hurt me. I don't feel sorry for mental afflictions, but if they were sentient beings, I would, because they're meeting that great big bodyguard with his big sword and taking the hair of the unruly mind and says, listen up, I'm bringing in vipassana and your days are numbered. Dum-da-dum-dum. So it sounds pretty good. Your mental afflictions, and this is what the Buddha said. By achieving shamatha, unwholesome states vanish like that. Like the murkiness and like the smoke in the air. I was hoping this morning's rain would really continue. I was praying. It didn't happen. But at least we had a sprinkle. That was better than nothing. But it's just like that. Just mental afflictions, they still arise, but they just have such a hard time getting their tentacles into you, getting you in their grip. They don't come up nearly as often. When they do, they just don't have the staying power. Your mind's too healthy. Whereas Shantideva says, insofar as your mind is just caught up in mind wandering, distraction, rumination, then you live between the fangs of mental afflictions. You have HIV of the mind. And that is any infection can come and just knock you out. When your mind's distracted, anything, jealousy, hatred, greed, whatever, the door's wide open, like, go ahead and come and dominate me. And they do. And they torture us. They torture us. So that's when your immune system is shot. The mind that is just caught up in obsessive, compulsive flow of quasi-conscious thinking, very similar to a non-lucid dream. There's just a little mini non-lucid dream. Every time we go off on a trip, didn't decide to, got caught up, wasn't even aware when it started, and we're kind of conscious but kind of not, we're just mind wandering. That's a little micro non-lucid dream. And scientists have studied this. I know somebody at the University of California, Santa Barbara, studied mind wandering a lot. Very fine psychologist. And I think he said something like 75% of the time in rumination is unpleasant. It's unpleasant. And I think somebody else studied non-lucid dreams and found 75% or so of non-lucid dreams are unpleasant, anxious, ill at ease, and so forth. Well, no surprise there. Mind wandering is just a little mini non-lucid dream in the waking state. And samsara is mostly unpleasant, and that's mind wandering and non-lucid dream writ large. Because we consider, Freud mentioned this in the Civilization and Its Discontents. He was very smart. I disagree with a number of his fundamental assumptions. He's very limited, but he's brilliant. And in his book, Civilization and Its Discontents, still a classic, he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, most of what happens in life is unpleasant, it's painful. Physically, our bodies are so vulnerable to pain. Mentally, we're so vulnerable to pain that we have times, good days, and spikes of happiness, but overall, it's tough. And he says we suffer, we're vulnerable to suffering because, number one, our bodies are so fragile, so we have 1/16 of an inch of skin separating us from everything. We're not even protected from tsetse flies. Tsetse, like mosquitoes, yeah? We're not even protected, even they can get through our armor. A little mosquito, have malaria, have a nice day. And bacteria can come in, and viruses can come in, let alone, little critters like scorpions and your beloved brown snakes. What protection do you have? So we're so vulnerable, and even though they don't get to us, we're just here getting older and getting vulnerable to sickness, then we keel over. The body's so frail, fragile, it's like a water bubble, just waiting to pop at any moment. And that's just your body, but how fragile are our minds? A person can give you a finger gesture, and I won't give it, but let's try this one. And people can be very upset. Oh, he gave me the finger. Isn't it ridiculous? I give you this finger, everybody laughs. I give you another one, not so, not so much. No, my teacher shouldn't show that finger. How about this one? That's Tibetan. You a loser. You a loser. You're just the pinky. This one. People can be upset like that, by a finger gesture. Let alone just mouthing some words like effing aing, Oh, how fragile we are. So he said, number one, your bodies are so fragile. Number two, the forces of nature are really brutal. I mean, try walking outside, even here, naked, day after day after day. See how that works out. Even in Australia, which isn't exactly, Finland. The nature's brutal. It's really brutal. Nature's been romanticized only recently, but through European history, mostly nature was just a scary place to be conquered. Conquer nature, right? Remember that? Conquer nature? Because it's scary. And then finally, he said, and expect a lot of suffering because you live with other people. And it can be really annoying. And so for 3 reasons, just get used to suffering because we're made that way. So that was pretty good analysis. Of course, he didn't see any of the inner causes, so he should have, as a mind scientist. Didn't get around to it, I guess. Because he said, we're basically neurotic and get over it because you'll never get over it. You can hopefully get over psychoses, but neuroses, that's just part of human nature. So his imagination was not great. But here, we're not dealing with imagination, we're talking about experience. That phase is called the phase of complete pacification. The sense of clarity, once you've achieved Shamatha and you get off the cushion, the sense of clarity is so great that you feel you could count the atoms of the pillars and walls of your house. You can't, but you have this extremely high definition, perception of reality around you. Visual, it's not really, it's mental awareness that's high frequency here. And if your eyes are decent, then you'll feel that auditory, everything is supercharged in terms of intensity. It's just like previously working with a 100-watt bulb and now a 1,000-watt bulb. And due to deep attentional stability, sleep does not occur as it did prior to achieving Samadhi. Rather, you feel as if your sleep was suffused with Samadhi and many pure dream appearances take place. So it fundamentally alters your whole nature experience of dreaming, and lucid dreaming is a piece of cake. Really, really easy. So you can see the 5 obscurations, they're out for the count, and you have a high degree of physical mental pliancy. Oh, you can read more, it's pretty. But you'll be able to display supernormal powers such as meditative manipulation and domination of the elements of the earth and so forth. And so that would be interesting to study. If this is superstition, let's just show that it's superstition. But you'll not know whether it's superstition or not unless you have people achieving shamatha. And then just see. What is true will be true. So, this is from 19th century. Due to bodily fitness, there's no feeling of physical heaviness or discomfort. The spine becomes straight like a golden pillar. And the body feels blissful as if it were bathed with warm milk. I've never tried that, but it sounds good. And so, moving on a bit. So now, those are the trait effects. You can read them. They're pretty straightforward. This is the advertising on the box, the box of shamatha. Come and get it. It won't cost you any money at all, but it will cost you everything. Because you can't do this, you will not achieve shamatha as a hobby. You can't do it as a part-time thing when you have other more important things to do. You'll achieve shamatha if and only if there's nothing more important for you to do in the near term. Nobody picks it up by the by, or virtually nobody, unless you're Gautama, unless you're Buddha. And this brings me to one of my favorite stories. The story, the very next point, the importance of achieving shamatha. This is, I know the context, straight from the Pali Canon. And so the Buddha has just gone through having achieved highest states of samadhi, finding they didn't bring about liberation or transformation, gave up on that, didn't work. And then he went off for 6 years of ascetic practices, breathing exercises, fasting, you name it. He tried whatever yogis at that time were trying to get complete mastery of the body by the mind over matter. And then in the process just ruined his health. Became emaciated, weak, and then his mind became dull and heavy. And then happily a young woman came to him, offered him rice, some boiled rice and curd or yogurt, encouraged him to get his health back, and he did. But I'd like to invite you to imagine that 6 years ago you walked away from home with your beautiful wife, your baby boy, your father who adores you, all your family adored you, and you've got this career waiting for you to become the king, and you would have been a very virtuous king, and you turned your back on all of that. And now you've been away from home for 6 years, you've ruined your health, and now you got back your health. Kind of like you're back to square one, like this is like the day you left the castle. And you must be wondering, and I tried everything. And nothing worked. All I did was damage my health, and I got my health back. This means nothing happened. I just sacrificed 6 years of living with my family, watching my son grow up, and I got nothing to show for it at all. Think of him as a person, because that's how he's portrayed here. And he's thinking, what shall I do now? I've tried everything else that everybody else has tried, and nothing worked. What shall I do now? And on that occasion, at the age of 34, I thought of a time when my Sakyan father, the king, was working. It's springtime. It's a time for the royal furrowing a plow. How do you say? Plowing a furrow in a field. It's a royal starting of the time of starting your spring sowing. So the father's doing a ritual, the royal ritual of starting the planting season. So his father's out working there in the hot sun, plowing a furrow. Everybody gives him, garlands, whatever. But he, the son, I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree. So he's off duty. The crown prince is off duty. He's not part of that ritual. And then quite secluded from sensual desires, disengaged from unwholesome things, I spontaneously, effortlessly, I entered upon and abode in the first jhana. He spontaneously achieved shamatha. Probably the first jhana, full jhana. I just slipped right into it, which is accompanied by coarse and precise investigation with well-being and bliss born of seclusion. So he just slipped into the first jhana with all the 5 jhana factors. And he remembered that, spontaneously slipping right into jhana, spontaneously achieving shamatha. Bear in mind, he was a prodigy of the highest caliber. And he thought of that at the age of 35, and he thought, might that be the way to enlightenment? Achieving shamatha, achieving the first jhana, might that be the way to enlightenment? And then following that memory, there came the recognition that this was the way to enlightenment. He'd lost it with all that asceticism and ruining his health, but he recognized, no, that one, where you have all your 5 jhana factors, right there at the tip of your fingers, I think I should achieve that again. So he practiced shamatha all over again. Took him a little while, maybe a couple of weeks, I don't know, but short time, and then he achieved it. And then he had this just of confidence. He knew now he was very close to what he had always been striving for. That he's going to go into that first jhana and he's going to use it to explore the nature of the mind. All the way up and all the way down. Explore the relationship of the mind to the rest of reality. And he sat down under the Bodhi tree there in Bodh Gaya with the extraordinary confidence to have the resolve, I'm not getting up. I'm not going to rise from this seat until I've achieved the perfect awakening that I've been seeking all along. And he did. But shamatha was the key. It wasn't sufficient, but it was the key. Without it, you sit under that tree as long as you like. You just get old. And so, here we find again the Mahayana Sutra. Maitreya note that all mundane and super mundane virtuous qualities of Shravakas, Bodhisattvas, and Tathagatas are all the result of shamatha and vipassana. And then in terms, I won't read all of this, but it's sufficient. We see from Ashvaghosha, Tsongkhapa cites this. You don't, if you want to achieve perfect enlightenment in terms of samadhi itself, you don't even need to fully achieve the first jhana. Achieving access is sufficient. But then you have to use it. You use it for vipassana. You use it for bodhicitta. You use it now in the Vajrayana context. Use that. Shamatha, vipassana, and bodhicitta. Use that now for Vajrayana practice, stage of generation completion. You really could achieve enlightenment in one lifetime. Without shamatha, forget about it. Hopeless. We turn to Achisha, who's one of my great heroes. Really, I adore him. Lived about 1,000 years ago. Tremendously influential, in an only beneficial way, a revitalizing, rejuvenizing, purifying Buddha Dharma, where there had been a lot of degeneration. So he came there in the 11th century, and he wrote the first lamrim for the Tibetan people, called the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the first setting up the stages on the path to enlightenment. And I'm excerpting just these phrases, highlighting the significance of shamatha. He writes, just as a bird with undeveloped wings cannot fly in the sky, those without the power of extrasensory perception cannot work for the good of living beings. That catches the attention. And he said, but that's not true, of course. Medical doctors and environmentalists and people working in technology, they help sentient beings in many, many ways. Sure, hedonically. He's not talking about, every dope knows that anybody can help somebody. That's not what he's talking. He's no dope. He's not saying something silly. He's saying if to help, to work for the good of living beings means to guide them on the path to liberation. But how can you guide people on the path to liberation if you've not even achieved shamatha, if you have no ability to see their minds to diagnose them? How can a doctor diagnose anybody if he doesn't have any instruments at all? Not even a stethoscope. How much can the doctor really diagnose by just looking at somebody with the eyeballs? And if you really have the capacity, full capacity to lead people all the way to liberation and enlightenment, how can you do that if you can't see their minds? Because I can't even diagnose them. You can't even see what mental victims and so forth are prominent. So the extrasensory perception is in fact very useful for diagnostic purposes. And then, if it hasn't caught your attention already, how about the next one? The merit gained in a single day by someone with extrasensory perception cannot be gained even in 100 lifetimes by one without extrasensory perception. So this is not trivial. Really drawing forth, taking that flashlight, turning it into a laser, this is, wow. I did the math, it's about 3 million to 1. And of course he's speaking somewhat symbolically there, but nevertheless, orders of magnitude. The benefit you can do to the world if you've achieved shamatha and seen some of the extrasensory abilities coming up, it just is no comparison. But then, okay, good, how do you get it? How do you get it? Without the achievement of shamatha, extrasensory perception will not arise. People do get sporadically a bit of remote viewing, precognition, and so forth. That does happen. I know one of the world experts on studying that scientifically. But it's not reliable. It's not durable. They get spikes and then not quite correct. So 60% accuracy, and so forth. Good, but not 100%. And so I know this fellow. He got millions of dollars of grants from the CIA and the State Department, the military, to do research. And came up with a lot of positive results. His name is Targ, Russell Targ. I know him. We've had a lot of conversations. Russell Targ, physicist, PhD in physics, and got millions of dollars grants that funneled through the Stanford SRI, Stanford Research Institute. And he did like 20 years of research. And he said, for me, this is not a matter of belief. These abilities do exist, but nobody had 100%. But he moved away from that, and ever since then, he's been devoting himself to the practice of Dzogchen. He said, I think I'm the only person who's gotten major grants from the CIA who's also practicing Dzogchen. But it was first one and then the other, not simultaneously. So, yeah, you can get sporadic clairvoyance, blah, 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 here and there, but not reliable, not robust. As long as the conditions for shamatha are incomplete, Samadhi will not be accomplished even if you meditate diligently for 1,000 years. What are the conditions? We already went through them. The outer conditions, the inner conditions. If they're not there, you could practice for 1,000 years and never achieve it. So he's shining a bright light on the tremendous importance of shamatha for being of deep benefit to others, to actually get them out of samsara, to heal them completely. But now, is that enough just to achieve shamatha? When a contemplative has achieved shamatha, extrasensory perception will also be realized. That's pretty straightforward. But if one does not cultivate the perfection of wisdom, does not gain the insight into emptiness and dependent origination, one's obscuration will not come to an end. So I think the rest of this, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. You can read right through it. Yeah. Oh, I have to read this one. I love it. On page 25, from Shapgar Tsoktu Rangdru, great Dzogchen master, 18th, 19th century. Master Ricard did a beautiful translation of his autobiography. And so he's showing the relationship between shamatha, or having really affirmed samadhi, and stage of generation in Vajrayana. He said the distance covered by a great ship pulled on land by 100 men for 100 days can be covered in a single day when it is put to sea. In the same way, a single day of meditation performed with real stability of mind, aka shamatha, brings more progress than 100 days practicing development and completion stages before stability of mind has been attained. So what I don't get is, why do we have so many hundreds, if not thousands of people going into three-year Vajrayana retreats where you'll practice little, if any, shamatha, and so you're practicing all of that without shamatha, pulling your mind along on rollerboards. Why not achieve shamatha? And then in one day you'll achieve more than 100 days. I don't get it. You do a 3-year retreat without shamatha, you come out with some great imprints and probably some other benefits, but you won't reach the path. Forget about it. I don't know how to say that in Australian, but you get the message. Forget about it, mate. I know it's terrible. I won't try again. But he's saying what everybody else said. Shamatha is the foundation for all further samadhis. So I think maybe we should just stop ignoring that. That's what I sense. And so now I'm just going to go back and wrap up in about 10 minutes. I'm going to go back to the end of the preceding. You can read the rest of that, pretty self-explanatory. But now back to, back to page 16, and I think we'll call it a wrap. Coming back to this theme of releasing your mind and all the activities of the mind, and among the activities of the mind are your experience of being embodied. That's activity of mind. It's javana. Remember javana? Activities of the mind. So back to that theme. Go back to the Buddha. Let's go back to the Buddha. Pali Canon. For one who clings, grasping, collapses down the infinite openness space of luminous pure awareness and collapse that down to grasping to one's body as I or mine, one's thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, personal history, collapsing down this open, luminous space of awareness down into my mind. Collapsing it down. For one who clings, motion exists. But for one who does not cling, there's no motion. When there's no motion, there is stillness. Where there is stillness, there is no craving. Where there's no craving, there's neither coming nor going. Where there's no coming nor going, there's neither arising nor passing away. Where there's neither arising nor passing away, there is neither this world nor a world beyond nor a state in between. Truly, this truly is the end of suffering. So just, again, basta. Stop identifying with your body and your mind. They are not you, have never been you. They're not yours, have never been yours. Stop it and see what's left is stillness. The stillness that is beyond time. And the stillness wherein you will discover nirvana and the unborn, unceasing bliss of nirvana. As Aditya said, it was breathtaking a few years back when I received his oral commentary on Nagarjuna's commentary on bodhicitta. He said, the actual nature of your mind, the emptiness of inherent nature of your own mind, your own awareness, that is nirvana. That is nirvana. Nirvana is a quality of your own mind already. It's emptiness of inherent nature. If you realize that, you realize emptiness, and the emptiness of your mind is nirvana. So it's closer than your hand. And he says, if you realize nirvana, if you see freedom, you see ultimate and irreversible freedom from suffering and its causes, if you know it, you taste it, you see it, then as you emerge from samadhi, your compassion just flows like never before. Because empathy can arise simply by witnessing other suffering. We may grieve with them, sorrow with them. We may hold and embrace and let our tears flow with theirs. Empathy's not that hard. But if you see no hope, if you don't see the possibility that the suffering might be alleviated, at least alleviated, that the suffering might be actually transcended altogether, if you don't see any hope, then you just rest in an ocean of tears, grieving for the world, but seeing no hope. And that's called a false facsimile of compassion. It may look like compassion. It's not. It's just sadness. Or the Germans call it Weltschmerz, a pain for the world. Doesn't go anywhere, has no direction, doesn't liberate anyone. But if you see, and if you know, not just believing or having faith, if you see that complete freedom from suffering and entering into the domain of reality of immutable bliss, timeless bliss, if you see, if you know that to be the case, you know it because you've seen it in your own mind stream, you know, then you know you're nothing special, I'm nothing special. If you've ascertained the actual nature, ultimate nature of your own mind, and you see nirvana, then you open your eyes and look, everybody else has that ability. Everybody could achieve complete freedom from suffering. And then compassion. I think of it like a lion emerging from his cage. That's the image that comes to my mind. Such courage, and the lion's roar. Suffering, get out of the way. Compassion is arisen. And the compassion is the aspiration, even the commitment. I shall liberate all sentient beings from suffering, because they can be liberated. So compassion comes out of your realization of emptiness. And then we go to Dzogchen. Yep. I have 5 minutes for Dzogchen. Everything up to Dzogchen, the 3 principles of the path, renunciation, bodhicitta, cultivating an authentic view of reality, of the emptiness of inherent nature of all phenomena, and how all phenomena do exist, but in this manner of dependent related events, nothing having its own intrinsic nature. That takes some effort. Each of those takes some effort. By and large, achieving shamatha, it takes some effort, maybe a lot, but it takes some effort. Shamatha takes effort. Renunciation, spirit of definite emergence, bodhicitta, realizing emptiness, takes effort. Stage regeneration, oh my goodness, it's very demanding. Very, very demanding. Stage regeneration, spectacular, so sophisticated, so profound, but it's not easy. And on the basis of fully achieving stage regeneration, which hardly anybody does anymore, haven't achieved shamatha. So how are you ever going to complete stage regeneration? No wonder hardly anybody does. But on that basis, you've completely finished your practice of stage regeneration. Now you're fully prepared to venture into a stage of completion. And oh, that's awesome. It's really, really deep. And it's not easy. It really takes striving. Very high tech, if I may say so. Because you're fundamentally altering, shifting the whole fabric of your existence right down to the energies, the pranas, the nadis, the chakras. Oh, you're just doing an extreme makeover of your subtle body. Extremely powerful, very demanding. But it can lead, stage regeneration completion, if you bring that to its completion, it can lead to perfect awakening in one lifetime. If you've achieved shamatha and bodhicitta, realization of emptiness, then this technology can be radically, breathtakingly powerful and swift. But Dzogchen is a step beyond the stage of completion. You don't necessarily have to have completed stage regeneration or completion. Definite, certainly true. To enter into Dzogchen, what do you need for Dzogchen practice to be fully efficacious and to have the possibility of achieving perfect enlightenment of a Buddha in one lifetime? What do you need for that to be a suitable vessel for Dzogchen? Well, it's been so many times, shall I sound like a broken record? If you haven't achieved shamatha, you'll never achieve the deepest realizations in a sustainable way in Dzogchen. Never. 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, doesn't matter. You need that suitable vessel, free of the 5 obscurations, imbued with the 5 jhana factors, supple, buoyant, blissful. You need that. Otherwise, nothing you achieve on that, without that, will be sustainable. But with that, then you need to probe into especially the nature of your mind, actual ultimate issue of mind. Does it exist in and of itself or not? You need to know that. You cut through all reification. You realize the actual nature of your mind, the emptiness of your mind. With those two, just those two, shamatha and ascertaining the emptiness of inherent nature of your own mind, your own consciousness, just that, then you are just like on the edge of a cliff, ready to plunge into the infinite depths. Identifying pristine awareness, seeing your own face as pristine awareness. And with that shamatha and vipassana, it can be sustainable. You can do it day and night, resting in that. And the really good news here is that pristine awareness, this is often called ultimate bodhicitta. It's called, in the Dzogchen, this is called ultimate bodhicitta. Not just the emptiness of inherent nature, pristine awareness is ultimate bodhicitta. And if you're resting in that, then effortlessly, relative bodhicitta, the motivation of all the bodhisattvas of the 3 times, will arise spontaneously, with no effort at all. It will just flow up and embrace you, engulf you. And so once you've achieved shamatha, ascertained the emptiness of your own mind, cut through to pristine awareness with its primordial purity, original purity, and are able to dwell in that with relative bodhicitta manifesting effortlessly. With that, you've now entered the path, an irreversible path that could easily lead to perfect enlightenment in one lifetime. And once you're resting there, the shamatha, the vipassana, motivated by bodhicitta, then your practice becomes very, very simple. As stated in the Vajrayana essence, leaving your body, speech, and mind in a state of inactivity, not activating any aspect of yourself as a sentient being, totally deactivated. In a state of inactivity is the unsurpassed supreme technique for inserting the vital energy and mind into the central channel. That's the way to achieve enlightenment in one lifetime. So what's the method? Motionlessly relax your body in whatever way is comfortable, like an unthinking corpse in a charnel ground. Let your voice be silent like a lute with its strings cut. Rest your mind in an unmodified state like the primordial presence of space. Remain for a long time in these 3 ways of resting. This pacifies all illnesses due to the disturbances of the elements and unfavorable circumstances, and your body, speech, and mind naturally calm down, ultimately calm down. Because you've already achieved shamatha. It's been there and done that. Now you're going to settle body, speech, and mind in their ultimate ground. And the ultimate purpose of this practice of total release, surrender, releasing all activity, all identification with your body and mind. The ultimate purpose of this practice is to experience the Dharmakaya, free of activity of a sentient being. All your activities will then be Buddha activities. And the Dalai Lama has the final word. When you rest the mind, putting it out of work, the vital energies naturally become refined, and solely by non-conceptual meditation, you slip into the clear light, pristine awareness. With the mind and vital energies, they dissolve into the clear light. Your vital energies dissolve into the energy of primordial consciousness. This requires settling in complete inactivity, which is not easy. And the Dalai Lama has the final word. Let's have our closing meditation, and it will be noon. In his masterpiece of mind training called The 7-Point Mind Training by Atisha, written down years later by one of his indirect disciples, one of the very well-known pith aphorisms that he cites there is in Tibetan, Totanye Lejawa Nyi. There are two tasks at the beginning and the end. The task at the beginning of any Dharma practice is bring forth the most magnificent motivation you possibly can. I would suggest bodhicitta. But when you come to the end of the task, whether it's a single meditation session, an act of generosity, any kind of task that has virtue, then at the end, dedicate the merit. Take the energy, the goodness, the virtue, the power of that deed, and dedicate it to your most meaningful aspirations. Dedicate the merit. Just for starters, you might say, dedicate the merit to your own perfect awakening for the sake of all sentient beings. That would be a good choice. So we will now, coming to the end of my portion, we'll have the grace note from Yangchen this afternoon. She will have the final say. But this will be the end of what I have to offer. As one Dzogchen master said, I've emptied my satchel, and there's nothing left. So I've given you everything I have. Pertaining to Shamatha, I'm done. So we're coming to a close then, and then we take whatever merit, benefit there may be, virtue from this time we've had together, and then we will dedicate the merit by way of the practice we're about to begin. I call it the Fourfold Vision Quest. The formatting is new. Contents are utterly traditional. As we enter this final session with me, you will have another session this afternoon with Yangchen. With the motivation of bodhicitta, I invite you to settle your body, speech, and mind in the natural states. The teachings of the Buddha recorded in the Pali Canon when he discusses loving kindness. And in the great commentaries, such as those by Buddhaghosa, when speaking of the cultivation of loving kindness, we are encouraged to develop loving kindness, this heartfelt aspiration, may you find happiness, and the causes of happiness. We're encouraged to direct loving kindness, first of all, to ourselves, wishing ourselves well, aspiring that each of us may find the happiness we seek and cultivate its causes. So in that spirit of self-directed loving kindness, and in the spirit of dedicating the merits of this retreat we've had together, we'll venture forth in this session in what I call the Fourfold Vision Quest. It entails 4 questions for which I invite you to find your own answers. Seek your vision, not something you've memorized or think you should do. What is your vision? And the first question is, what is your vision right now, today? What would bring you the happiness that is your heart's desire? The fulfillment, the contentment, the satisfaction, the joy. What does that look like? The well-being you've always been seeking. What would bring you such joy in a sustainable fashion? Seek your vision and see what comes up. What would make you truly happy? Fulfill your innermost desires. And then when a vision comes to mind, and of course it can be different tomorrow and a week from now and a year from now, but your vision for today, when a vision comes to mind, I would find the happiness I seek if that were to occur. Then arouse love and kindness for yourself. Arouse the aspiration, may I find such happiness, such well-being that would be utterly fulfilling. And may I cultivate the causes for such well-being and dedicate the merit of this retreat to the realization of that aspiration. With every out-breath, arouse the aspiration, may it be so. May I find the happiness I seek. I dedicate the merit to that happiness. With every out-breath, as if breathing life into this vision. Aspire for it. Dedicate your merit to it. And if you wish, you may visualize symbolically your own pristine awareness, your own Buddha nature. Call it what you will. That dimension of your awareness from which you could actually realize your highest dreams, your greatest aspirations. Visualize your own pristine awareness as an incandescent, radiant orb of white light at your heart. And with every out-breath, as you arouse this aspiration and you breathe life into this aspiration, imagine rays of light, incandescent rays of light beaming forth, flooding forth from an inexhaustible source, permeating every cell of your body, saturating every aspect of your mind, purifying, saturating, filling your whole body with bliss, your mind with bliss. With every out-breath, arouse love and kindness for yourself. May it be so. Then venturing boldly into the realm of possibility, by the power of imagination, imagine here and now, experiencing such well-being in your body and mind. Imagine it. Your dreams having come true. Your body and mind filled with the bliss and the loving kindness and the purity of your own pristine awareness. And now we turn to the second question. But we begin with an observation, and that is, It's impossible for any of us to realize such joy entirely on our own. We must rely on others, on spiritual guides, on friends. We rely upon the help of others, the world around us. Then we may realize our aspirations. And so with this in mind, we pose the second question. What would you love to receive from the world around you? From enlightened sages and saints, from your neighbors, from the world around you, what would you love to receive from the world around you to enable you to realize this heartfelt desire? What would you love to receive from the world? To fulfill your hedonic needs, your eudaimonic aspirations. Envision it. And when a vision emerges, once again, arouse this aspiration of loving kindness for yourself. You may articulate this aspiration from moment to moment, day to day, in every moment. May I receive from the world around me all that I truly need to realize the happiness that is my heart's desire. May reality rise up to meet me every step of the way, to realize such perfection of well-being and joy. And with each in-breath, arouse this aspiration, dedicating your merit. And with each inhalation, imagine the light of blessings from the awakened ones, the enlightened ones, flowing in upon you from all sides, in the form of light, converging on your body and mind. And with every inhalation, imagine the light of kindness of all sentient beings who have supported you in countless past lifetimes, have supported you to the present moment. Imagine the light of kindness of all sentient beings flowing in upon you. With the aspiration, may I receive all I truly need to proceed on this path to perfection. And imagine this light of blessings, the light of kindness, converging on your body and mind, filling, saturating your entire being with blessings, empowering you on your path. And by the power of your imagination, boldly move into that domain of reality that is right now a domain of possibilities. Possibilities are real. Venture into that realm of potentiality, of possibilities, by the power of imagination, and imagine here and now, from moment to moment, day to day, as your life continues to flow. Imagine from moment to moment that reality is constantly rising up to meet you by way of the kindness of sentient beings, the blessings of the awakened ones. Imagine here and now, reality is rising up to meet you, to provide to you all that you truly need on the next stage of your journey. Imagine it. And this leads us to a third question. Again, beginning with an observation, and that is There's no possible way to realize such well-being, such fulfillment, without some very deep, radical, irreversible transformation taking place from within. We can't just maintain the status quo. There's much to be done. Which raises the question, how would you love to transform? How would you love to evolve spiritually? What kind of a person would you love to become in order to realize the happiness you seek? From what hindrances, obscurations would you love to be free? And with what virtues would you love to be richly endowed? In order to find this happiness that is your heart's desire, what kind of a person would you love to become? And see what comes to mind. When it does come to mind, again in the same way, arouse this self-directed loving kindness. Direct your merits, all the merits from this time together, that it may be so. And again, with every exhalation, breathe life into this vision. May it be so. May I become the person I'd love to become. May I cultivate all the causes needed to bring that about. With every exhalation, breathe life into this. With every exhalation, again imagine from this inexhaustible source at your heart, a cascade of light flowing out in all directions. Again, permeating, saturating, purifying your body, your mind, filling your body, mind with light. Purifying, dispelling all that might hinder this transformation.